Sunday, March 17th, 2024. Welcome to the first Honeycomb podcast discussion. We have a special guest with us today, Josh Kauffman. If you've been around the Hivemapper community, you've probably seen him there. He's a superstar. And we also have the three hosts here, Brad, Chris, and myself. These streams will typically take place on Brad's channel from here on out, but they're being broadcasted from all three of ours as of right now. So there's going to be discussions in all three channels. If you're not seeing some of the comments that we display on this screen, that's the reason why. So you may want to move to his channel. Definitely subscribe to him, because at one point we'll cease to be doing these streams on Chris and my channel. But this will be a stream particularly dedicated to Hivemapper, the updates, news, and overall discussion. We're going to be doing this every other Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, US. It may vary, and sometimes we may do pre-recorded shows depending on everyone's schedule, but we intend on being very consistent from here on out. As always, I have to give you the disclaimer that nothing you hear in this video is financial advice. You should consult with a trusted professional before acting on any of this information. And what is stated in this stream is not the official view of the Hivemapper team or foundation. These are strictly our opinions. One thing I do want to address before we get started, which is a little bit of an elephant in the room. There is another podcast dedicated to Hivemapper that I was on, and they are my friends. I support them. I'm not entirely sure what the status, if they're going to continue, but this is in no way any disrespect towards them. In fact, Leo will be joining us on the next show as a guest, but they don't put out podcasts enough for my liking. I really like the show, but I do support them going forward, and I hope they continue. But I'm sure there'll be occasional guests on this show. So let's get started. Let's do the introductions. Brad, let's hear it.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, Bradley Meyer with the Deep End Connection here in Chicago. See, I've been in crypto space for 4 years now. So I've been building out my fleet. I put in pre-orders the first day they opened back in April of 2022 and been going strong. I have 55 drivers in my fleet today with plans to double that. Well, almost double it, but get to about 100 with my next couple of shipments over the next 2 months. And then with ultimately plans to get to 200. So been working with this project for a while. Excited to be on with you guys today.
I guess I'll go next. So I got into Hivemapper in October 2022 when they first announced it. I just made like a basic YouTube video, and then I didn't get my Dashcam until April. And I've been mining with 2 Dashcams for a couple months now. It's been pretty fun to earn some honey while I'm driving and making some content for you guys to educate people with all the different changes in the space.
I'm Joe. I have the Network Bits Crypto YouTube channel. I've had a Dashcam since December of 2022, been making content on it, and as of recently, really engaging with it. Very excited about this project. You've probably seen me all over YouTube and in other deep in specific crypto projects. That's my YouTube channel is Network Bits. Josh, take it away.
Sure. So thanks for having me on the inaugural show of your podcast, guys. So basically, my name is Josh. I work for a company called Streaming Fast. We're a blockchain company. Mainly our focus is on indexing data on high throughput chains. So that's kind of our bread and butter. But I'm one of the few non-technical people on the team, so I can't contribute much to how do we index data and how do we make that better. My focus has really been on governance, tokenomics, investments. I have a passion for DeepIn. Ever since Helium, when I first started getting into Helium, I grew out a fleet of Helium miners there quickly. That led me down the DeepIn rabbit hole. So then as soon as we saw Hivemapper pop up, basically created a proposal to my company. I wanted at the time, let's buy 1,000 Dashcams. Let's kind of blanket Dashcams across the world. Let's aim at the secondary, tertiary cities that we knew that LA, New York, London, all these cities would get Dashcams. But what about all your secondary and tertiary cities where people A, don't know about it, B, don't have the money for it? Let's spread it across the world because we see value in what's going on. So we started having conversations pretty quickly with the Hivemapper team. And this is all pre-launch of anything. There was no camera, there was no nothing yet. It was just kind of the idea was out there that we knew the past of Hivemapper with drones, and we were able to kind of talk to the team what they've already done. But we saw that very quickly. Hey, they're lacking fleet infrastructure. So because we wanted to do 1,000 cameras, we needed fleet infrastructure. And so we saw, let's maybe work together on this. So essentially, we worked out a deal. And so my company was myself and 2 engineers working full time for a little over a year and a half. We were working on it. We built out the fleet integration, and very quickly, once that got to kind of an MVP stage, which is kind of what you see right now, as it is, there's been a few things that have been added since we stopped working on the fleet stuff. We started working very quickly on machine learning on the camera, some UI UX tweaks for them. The Hivemapper team, they're a great team of engineers working on the project, but they're trying to tackle a very, very large landscape of things. So they very quickly said, hey, can you guys help us with this? Can you help us with that? And the engineers that I happen to work with, I'm very, very lucky. They're, you give them any problem, they're going to figure out, down to the lowest level what they got to do. So that's kind of how we got into Hivemapper. Because we wanted to build out the fleet integration, we basically said, okay, let's build out a small fleet. We originally said we wanted to do 1,000 cameras. Let's bring it down to 50 cameras. The reason we kind of lowered down is we didn't want to be competitive with any of the other fleets out there because we wanted to work alongside them. So actually, very early on, I was talking to Brad quite often. Hey, what's wrong? What can we fix? What else do you need? So let's kind of figure out how we can help and support fleets and onboard more fleets into the ecosystem. So that was part of our focus for a while there. And at that point, we just started getting really deeply involved. I've been a moderator since very early on in the Hivemapper community. And my focus typically, so I've been in about 6 years now in the crypto space. And that entire time, my focus has always been how do we educate other people? If I have a lot of knowledge that's locked up in my brain, it doesn't help anyone. So might as well kind of spread that out, answer questions. I always look at it, if it takes me 5 minutes to answer a question and it might save someone an hour or 2 hours of research, might as well take that 5 minutes.
Well, that's why we have you on today's stream, so you can brain dump all this knowledge that you have right to the audience. And yeah, it certainly helps the community. And speaking of that, in our audience, thank you all for joining us right now. Currently, we have 25 viewers. If you wouldn't mind doing so, hit the like button, subscribe to all these individuals if you haven't already. Share this out in different Hivemapper communities, Facebook groups, Telegram groups, people etc. And it helps with the stream and it helps with the algorithm. And I think we're going to make today very worthwhile when it comes to content. We have a lot to cover, and there's been a lot of developments within the past couple days, even week. So we'll get into that part. So I want to briefly cover what we're going to discuss intentionally. Although this is a very informal type of stream, we're going to just freehand it with whatever comes to mind and whatever we progress through. But generally, we have a loose agenda of what we want to hit. So, of course, the events, we want to discuss the Dashcam and what we foresee coming from that new product. And then we'll discuss the improvement proposals and break them down in layman's terms, make this easy to understand for the audience, where we'll talk MIP 7 and how there were some changes to it, even as of recently. 8 for regional activation deactivation, MIP 9 for the request for proposal for developers, 10 for an app-based contributions and reward, 11 pre-proposal rewards pool redesign. That one has not been added to the Hivemapper Discord as of yet, I believe. That's correct, Josh. And then there's MIP 12, the QA and AI trainers increase in the percentage of pools. So all that being said, anyone want to take it off with the recent events, or I can take that one if you like.
You mean with the B or what?
Well, let's discuss the firmware push and some of the regions added first. So I know that's also the elephant in the room, and an event that we should touch on why this is happening.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm curious to see like how have your guys' rewards been impacted by the extra regions being added? Like I've seen a little bit of an impact, and I get the thought behind it, right? Like people need to be able to be fairly rewarded for their specific regions. One thing I have to say, they added them pretty quickly, like more quickly than I expected. Like part of me, when one of the concerns I had was, they're not able to ship these cameras out fast enough. They should kind of taper those regions being added to how quickly they can ship out cameras, in my opinion. But it looks like the U.S. is pretty much covered at this point, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just about. There are some areas that have not been included as of yet, I believe, looking at the map, but I haven't looked closely enough to say definitively. I understand the reasoning behind it, and I believe the vast majority of these regions do have drivers. And based on my experience thus far with smaller regions, if you do dedicate a decent amount of time of it, a couple hours a week, it seems to progress fairly fast when it comes to progress score of the region. So my biggest concern with adding all these regions was that if they're not progressing, then that slows down the average. That's kind of sandbagging the average of the global map progression and maturity, which then causes less rewards overall from the global pool to be emitted. And we actually are starting to see a little bit of that. But I also think it could be because of some of the processing issues from these new firmware pushes. I could be wrong. I don't have all the information, can't tell you definitively, but there are multiple factors that are part of what we're seeing with the global rewards pool output. So I'm going to pull up that link, and if anyone else would like to comment.
Yeah,
for sure.
So Brad, to your question, I mean, my fleet currently, I've got 50 cameras in one fleet, and then I've got another fleet of about 10 or so that are currently running. I've seen about a 15% drop week over week. Now it's a small sample. It's only really the first week since we've had this region. There's been past weeks where I've had a 15% increase as well. So, it could be natural noise. It could be due to the issues of, regions being added. Now, to your point there, Joe, we've been seeing a drop of a drop of kilometers being submitted because there's a lot more processing happening on the camera. For a lot of regions, especially any region that's been well pegged above 95% for many weeks now, those regions, even if they see a drop of imagery being submitted, they're still going to be getting coverage at 100%. They're still going to be getting activity at above 100% because there's still so many drivers there. So while I think that might factor a bit, I don't think it'll be a major factor. I think it's for sure going to be the regions being added. I think it's a necessary, I'll use the word evil, a necessary evil, but that's not the right word for it. The world has to be regionified eventually. So whether we get there sooner or later, it's just a matter of when the rewards start to change and shift. The one benefit, though, I will say of having these regions created is I'll sometimes be approached by someone who wants to join my fleet, and they'll say, I'm driving in XYZ area. If there's no region there, as a fleet owner, I don't know what's the region weight for that region, how many kilometers will be there, how wide is that region going to spread? Is it going to take up the whole blank area of the map that he's in, or is it going to be 3-4 regions that fill up that blank area? So it actually helps us as fleet managers to make a more informed decision, because he might say, hey, I drive 1,000 kilometers a week in this area, and I can quickly do a calculation. Oh, just him alone should be able to get that region up to 85% or 90%. So much more worthwhile. So it actually helps us a bit in that sense. But yes, it does overall drop the rewards.
Yeah. And it looks there like what Joe you just pulled that up. Looks like the emissions did drop a little bit. I'm curious how much of that had to do with the update, because there was a little bit of spotty coverage after that update happened, for sure. But the other thing to think about is as we move into summer months and we have longer days, we'll be able to map more imagery as well. So that's certainly a factor. I would say I saw about a 15% decrease last week as well across my fleet. So there's a lot of different factors in play here. It'll be interesting to see what happens this week. And I know they're looking to push out another firmware update to kind of hopefully fix some of the issues we're seeing with this most recent one.
Yeah, I think they pushed one this morning, actually. I just updated mine.
Okay.
Yeah. So for anyone in the audience who's unaware, basically what's causing the issues is really Hivemapper is very focused, and some of their customers are demanding like high degrees of privacy. So the camera, what they're trying to do is have all the cameras before the imagery even moves from camera to phone. They would like to see that all privacy masking has happened. So no faces, no license plates, even vehicles. They're trying to block out all vehicles. They want that nothing to leave the camera unless it's been privacy blurred, which means what has to happen in camera is a lot more intensive than it was before, because there was some privacy masking happening on the edge. They were, backfilling that with everything on the server, and they said, no, we have to get to everything on the camera operating there, which just means there's more happening on the camera. That's something that my engineers worked on for a bit back when we were working on the project. So they've seen the pitfalls. It's not an easy task to solve. So that's why, nothing's perfect when it first rolls out. One idea I gave them right away was, what if we had sort of two modes, a collection mode and a processing mode? So someone like me, I had two cameras in my car for a bit, because usually when I get cameras in before I send it out to a fleet driver, I like to drive with them for a bit, make sure everything's working, so there's no issues of sending out a bum camera to the driver. So I noticed when I had two cameras in my car, there were some issues where essentially it was running through a power splitter to both, and I can see GPS drift happening. But when I went down to one camera, my one camera was perfect. I was still running it. So basically I knew that the power draw was causing the CPU to kind of overload. And basically what happens on the HTC is the GPS is one of the first modules to go out and cause those little drifts here and there. So I basically said, what if we said, let me turn off the processing power on one of the cameras, so that it could be, all the power can be going to making sure the GPS is still strong. And then I'm lucky I have a 12-volt always on socket in my car. I can get out of the car. The camera could do all the ML processing, do all the privacy masking. And when I reconnect to the camera tomorrow, later on, it'll give me all that imagery. Now, this wouldn't be a perfect solution for everyone, but for those people that either have a 12-volt always on socket, or drive at night after mapping hours are finished, or can bring the camera inside, it at least gives them the option, if they want to, have the power going towards GPS, and then afterwards, put the power towards the ML.
Yeah, I do. I want to also elaborate on that point a little bit, Josh. And I'm not totally familiar with the, I know it's a CM4 and the HDC, but generally speaking, the single board computer types, when they don't have the appropriate amount of power, or they get too hot, they start to throttle the CPU. So I am considering putting my thought is I'm going to put a fan on the dash. I'm going to mount it to the dash and aim it up at the B. I know some people like to put it right on it. I'm not sure how much noise that would cost, that would interfere with the GPS. I'm a little hesitant to do that. But real quick, I want to talk about what is being displayed from flipsidecrypto.xyz. This is the emissions output for the Honey token that is divvied out to drivers. So as you can see, it increases over time as the map progresses more. When there's a slowdown in that progression, which is based on numerous metrics and a cumulative score, then when that slowdown happens, they taper off. There will be a maximum amount of emissions. I don't recall it off the top of my head, but maximum amount per week. I'm not sure we're close to approaching that yet. Josh, would you know that?
No, definitely not. I think we're probably somewhere in the 50 to 60% range of what that maximum is per week. And that it's not a fixed amount over a week. It's kind of a tapering curve over time.
Yeah. And the point I want to get at here, and that I try to convey to the audience quite often, is because of this emissions model that we're working with, it's different than what most people are used to in crypto, and it's especially in DePIN. There's this thought like the early comers get the majority rewards, they do the best, and once all the other hardware comes online, it's just everyone is SOL on rewards from there on out. Hivemapper's put a lot of thought into this, and it both incentivizes it, and there's fairness built into it. Like, I kind of compare it to, we all pay national taxes to the government, but when it comes time for the government to divvy that money out, a lot of the very rural areas go overlooked for the longest time, and the majority of that is dumped back on the main cities, where they've taken that into account, where the regions have incentives that they will have a larger portion of the global rewards pool if there's more work being done there, if there's more efficiency being done there. And that's what we're seeing with the multiplier score. And there's also rewards increase as more efficiency is being done overall, or decrease when less work is taking place. So I don't believe we're going to see something like what happened with helium. There will be a tapering off of personal rewards for everyone as more people come online and the roads are more saturated. That's to be expected, but it won't be an extreme scenario. If all goes well, knock on wood, anything could happen. Can't guarantee it, but I'm more confident in this tokenomics model than I would be in the majority of crypto projects when you have that boom time, everyone's scrambling to get a camera.
Yeah.
And
And I'll say, like, right now, people are breaking even in less than a week in a lot of cases. So, even if the rewards do drop at current values, at least, I think it'll still make sense. That's why I'm planning to continue growing my fleet, because even if it takes me a month, that's still, in my opinion, for me at least, and everyone needs to decide what to do for themselves. But for me at least, I think that's well worth it to continue building out my fleet. And I have some that aren't coming till, June, maybe. We'll see. We'll see what the schedule looks like. So I don't know. That's kind of my take on it, that because helium dropped off significantly. So to your point, it's not just a fixed number of honey tokens distributed each week. I mean, it does change as the map progresses. So I think it was well thought out in that sense.
Yeah, and we also saw, I remember when I joined Helium, we were less than 10,000 hotspots worldwide. And then very quickly it went to, 1 million hotspots worldwide. And so because you had that fixed pool, it got divvied up amongst that million now. Whereas now with the regionification system, as long as you're in a region that not many other people are tackling, and you can move your cameras around to different regions, you're always going to be doing well. I think that's kind of my plan for my fleet. I don't care to have tons of cameras. I don't have any in LA. I don't pick on LA because it's just one of the top regions. There's going to be a lot more going on in LA. So if I had in LA, I'd be pulling back from LA and sending it to places like Indonesia and, all around Africa, those places that, only have a few cameras going at the moment, and be the one to build up certain regions. And you can grab all those rewards for those regions, as well as add places on the map that aren't currently being mapped.
Yeah, so I wanted to kind of go into the next topic, which would be the first time mapping rewards, which they just phased out with the recent adding of 700 regions, I said, Joe, or you said. So do you guys want to talk about that a bit?
About 700. And there was a large batch before that. I don't have specific figures, but that was covered in one of the improvement proposals. But go ahead, one of you may elaborate.
Yeah, so they decided to end the first time mapping rewards, and this was part of one of their MIP proposals, I believe. I forget which one there are, but it's one of the ones we're covering today. And the reason for this is being the fact that it is, there you go, you're pulling it up. Which one is that? MIP
So
7?
they amended MIP 7. They amended it.
All right. So they said they completed the regionalization of most active countries around the world. They're quickly creating a region once a contributor starts mapping outside of those defined regions. They decided to end the first time map bonus because they realized, I think, only one person was left by the end of it, when they just decided to close it.
4.
I'm trying to find it here.
4 people left. In this past week, 4 people were mapping outside of regions.
Yeah, so at that point, with all the regions they added, there's no benefit to having the first time map. The first time map was created so that people that are not in regions can still earn and kind of have the benefits of being in a region without being in a region. Now, since everyone is in a region, there really is no need to have that. There's a lot of misconception in the community, in their Discord. The people are like, oh, we're going to get less rewards. Keep in mind, this doesn't take place. It's not in effect until, I believe, next week is the last week you're actually able to get first time map rewards. So it's not an instant cutoff. So there's still time if you guys want to get some more first-time map rewards to go map some stuff.
It's interesting.
It says
I mean,
the final bonus will be paid out first week of April to cover submissions made during the week of March 25th to March 31st. All other elements of MIP 7 are unaffected. Real quick, Chris, I want to argue with you that there's no need to have it. I mean, I that is a point that now everyone has a region. You won't have to worry about your rewards. Like, you're going to be rewarded because you have a region. I think it would still having that first time map bonus, it would still incentivize some drivers who like to chase those type of unmapped roads, region or otherwise, to go to places that have not been mapped and cause the map in its entirety to have more of a completion quicker. Regardless, it's, you know, the places that won't be mapped, if ever, I mean, how important are they to have on the actual map? I don't know, but they're usually places in the middle of nowhere no one drives, right?
Exactly. Yeah, most of the areas around me that aren't mapped are neighborhoods, and I just don't see that being valuable to Hivemapper. If they're selling this data to companies, companies are more likely looking for roads that are heavily populated and already have a lot of traffic. So neighborhoods where there's not a lot of people, or back roads in the middle of Pennsylvania, not as important as the
But you
city.
don't know. You can't assume that, because you know there's municipalities who want that data to see what's going on in their town. There's real estate companies that want that data to get a ground view of what's going on there. So I don't ever jump to conclusions about, you know, how people are going to use the network necessarily, unless we can see analysis of large data aggregates.
Yeah, and I think having the bursts are also very helpful for situations like that. So you could, if you want someone in an area where there's not a lot of people, let's say that's development that's not mapped near me, you can throw some bursts down there if you need that data, and it would incentivize people. So they still have a way to incentivize people. It's just not as open to everyone. They can actually choose where they want to place the incentivization.
Yeah, I think the bursts do help with that. I will say another use case though is for insurance companies that do homeowners insurance. They want to be able to see how well people keep up their house and that sort of things. I know that's something that they were in discussions about. I'm not sure if they gotten a deal with any insurance companies or not, but I know that's a use case they were looking at least at one point. But yeah, I think the bursts kind of offset that for sure. But I wonder how much of it is because they have the regions versus maybe the Explorer wasn't accurate on the first time mapped kilometers sometimes, because I notice when I go on there, I don't think it's always 100% accurate. And I don't know how much manual work was being done for those to be paid out, but I don't think it makes a huge difference, frankly, because as we get more and more of these dash cams out and we have more people mapping, these roads are going to get mapped. I think there's less need to incentivize people. And with the bursts, if you have customers that want to buy this data, you can really pinpoint those areas. And I know they're working on better ways to guide you to those honey bursts right now in the app is one of the main things they're working on. So I think that's kind of how they're looking at this.
Yeah, and it was also always a source of frustration in the community where someone said, oh, you know, I did 1,000 kilometers last week that's never been mapped according to the Explorer. But then you have to tell them the Explorer is behind. It can't always be relied on as the accurate source of truth. So it would have people feeling frustrated because they felt like they did a specific set of work and should have been rewarded a certain way. And Hivemappers continuously said, that's not how the system works. You should not be going out specifically to map. So it was perhaps incentivizing the wrong behavior from what Hivemapper wanted to see. So I can definitely see where they're coming from with rolling it back.
I just wanted to show some comments here before we get into the next topic. They said they didn't consider side-facing camera captures towards the first-time map. That is fresh data in my view. I agree to a certain extent. Obviously, it's new. A lot of people don't have two dash cams, and having the ability to map all the side stuff is going to be a lot newer than just mapping what is right in front of you. And then James also said, if the companies want to get that unmapped or data, they might have to reoffer the bonus at some point, which they didn't say that that's off the table. Anything could happen.
Yeah, and also to the
Go
sorry,
ahead. Go ahead, Josh.
I would say to the first point of, the side camera wasn't having its own separate pool of first time mapped bonus. It's until there's enough customer demand that says, hey, we need that side view. I can see where they're coming from. Right now, they just want to demonstrate coverage around the globe so they can really attract more customers. So if a customer said, hey, we need side view, then they can, really target that. But up till now, once a hex has been seen, if they have that data, they have that data. So from my standpoint, probably no need to incentivize that in that way. Though I do see the point of, why aren't they each getting their own bonus? But I think from their standpoint, from a customer standpoint, it doesn't make sense.
And one of the things that you said in your previous statement, Josh, how it's not intended to be like an actively searching for ways to make money. This is supposed to be more of the intention of Hivemapper, and what the CEO Ariel has conveyed in so many ways is this is supposed to be more of a passive sort of effort where you're mapping as you drive, not particularly to make money. You're not driving to make money off this. And yes, I agree as well. I tell people that is the lens you should be seeing it through, as that's its intention. That's even if there's an opportunity to make a significant amount of money right now. And well, there was, at least there may still be, there's definitely some areas that there still is. Don't take, I mean, you can't take that for granted. You can't expect that to be forever. You can't expect this to, to be rich, pay your bills. I don't understand why some people come to this with that mentality and have a lot of grievances, pose no solutions, don't take the time to understand. And it's like, it's a kind of a maniacal, like, obsession that you'll see in some of the comments that I try to stray away from those discussions, even though we talk about like, this is how the mechanics are, this is what it's intended to do. There's always someone who is going to disagree with the reward system and find a way to say that it's unfair. And hey, that's large scale governance anywhere you go, in crypto, in the real world, however you want to see it. But that's what I try to encourage people that, if this is making you at one point $50 worth a month, and you're not doing anything to go out of your way, you have to do whatever. That whole month you had to do 30 minutes worth of, maintenance and uploading and updating your camera. Well, that adds up over time. It's a nice speculative investment, in my opinion. Got to give the disclaimer. But, and that's how many months is that? 6 months, in the case, sometimes 8 months, that pays off the investment. Like, and you're going to complain about that. Some of these complaints are just, they're not reasonable. If you're truly looking at this, like, yes, when it scales, when there are, hundreds of thousands of dash cams online, yeah, rewards will have to be split amongst more contributors. Go ahead. I hope I've conveyed the point.
No, but here's the issue though. The same thing happened with helium. People are going on about how much they're making, and people go into it with unrealistic expectations. I mean, that's where the problem comes in. And I it's going to happen with this project as well to an extent, but hopefully they watch, some of our videos where we do discuss that rewards will drop over time at some point. I mean, it can't stay the way it is right now, as more and more people come online. But like I said, I'm still expanding my fleet, y'all. I'm curious about, have you all upgraded? Did you upgrade to the B, or do you keep your orders in place for the HTC?
I upgraded.
Did you?
I haven't upgraded any of my orders. I just have a fear that there will be delays more than I'd like with it's new piece of hardware. New hardware is tough. Hivemapper's already done it twice, where they put out 2 pieces of new hardware. Both times, understandably, they were late on meeting their deadlines. Not to say that's a bad reflection on them. I think any company putting out new hardware is going to be late regardless.
Every crypto company is late.
Forget
There's
crypto.
always delays.
All of them.
Always.
There's
Everyone.
Yeah.
So I might as well go with what I know. I also wouldn't be surprised. Now I've spoken with the engineering team, and they feel confident that when the B ships, it'll be feature complete with what they're saying it will have. I work in software. Even my guys that I work with in my company, we always say we'll be able to give the XYZ feature by a certain date, and rarely do we hit it. And that's no one's fault other than stuff comes up. You have to make decisions. You have to roll back. So I don't want to be at the forefront of putting all this money into new cameras and then have to wait for those great features. And look, the B is extremely promising. It opens up many new fleet conversations where I've had these conversations and they go, "Oh, we've got 20 trucks, but I don't want my drivers doing an ounce of work." Well, the B solves that, and I'm very excited for that. But it's hard for me to get in what I probably think is going to be a year earlier than when we'll see those cameras.
Yeah. I'm in the same boat. I mean, I think it really depends on your situation though. Like if you ordered in, like I have orders in December, right? So there's already the 2,500 airdrop coming, and I'm going to, expected to get those probably in within the next few weeks for one of my orders. That's to your point. I think there's going to be delays. They said Q3. I would be shocked if they start shipping these before September, and for a lot of people that are moving over to the B, it's probably going to be, later than that, October, November, December. For me to get 4,000 honey bonus, so a difference of 1,500, I can make that up in a couple weeks of mapping. So I would rather get my cameras out there sooner, and then ultimately, eventually, everything's going to shift over to this new model, right? And they want people to shift over the new model because they want to be able to cut off the manufacturing of the HTC. But I think over time, as these HTCs die, then I'll replace them with the B as I need to. But for me, it didn't make sense to switch my orders over. Now, if you were ordering in like late January or February and you were going to be waiting until July, August anyway, then it might change things a little bit for you potentially. And then if you have like a fleet of vehicles like Josh just mentioned, where you don't want to have your drivers interacting with it at all, and you just stick it in the windshield and you have employees that are already on the road anyway. Well, now you can probably take 100% of the rewards because they're not interacting with it at all. In that case, it might make sense then to wait for the newer model. So I think it really depends on the situation. But for me personally, because I'm working with individual drivers mostly, I've kept all my orders in the old model.
Yeah, and one thing I do want to say, and I am trying to, in a way, say this is not necessarily in a negative light, but something that we tend to expect, not just with Hivemapper, but with any product, is when when they do these developments, when they sent out the HTC, the HTCS, and they had their test groups, and they felt that the software and the firmware of the Dashcam was stable. Well, when you get these out into the wild and you see all the different ways people use this in all the different scenarios that they're in, and the different variables that come with having maybe a different car, or you're in a different region of the world, whatever it may be, there are so many little details that affect things that can cause, for that specific camera, a severe issue or an unexpected behavior. And when you have these manufactured at scale, you start to see some of these issues become, I guess, I don't want to say more prominent, but you start to see what you wouldn't have seen before. And the point being is, we've seen these same kind of, you see this with any product just about that is this sophisticated. But yes, in the beginning of the HTC and the HTCS, there were issues that there were people complaining about that were resolved. Credit to the Hivemapper team. But yeah, you might have some initial issues with this. It may be not as smooth as you think it's going to be for the first couple weeks, the first couple months. Not saying that will be the case, but I would, if I had to bet one way, yeah, don't believe that it's going to be just set and forget initially. Give it some time. Like if I had, so I have one on order, for the sake of demoing it. You know, if it was a fleet that I was managing, I may wait just a little bit to start sending these cameras across countries to be placed in, in vehicles, before like I'd start placing them locally so I can service them, if those issues were to arise. But neither here or there. We'll see when we cross that bridge.
Yeah, no, same. I'm the same boat where I ordered a few for myself just to play around with, and then I'll start replacing HDCs, as Brad mentioned, with the B. But I always tell people that even if things don't ship as we want them to, or don't have the features that we want, no one wants the B to be a success more than the Hivemapper team. That's their bread and butter. That's what's gonna drive that company forward over the next decade. So even if something doesn't come feature complete day one, they want it more than you want it, even as a driver, because that's what their customers are demanding as well. And that's what allows them to expand, from, 10, 15,000 cameras now to 100,000, 300,000 cameras in the future. So the team is on your side. I always tell people when people complain or, say, why isn't this working? What's going on? The team wants it even more than you do.
Well, if you listen to some of the conspiracy theories, they'll tell you, the reason for this last firmware push is so more people will buy the B, and also the reasons for the rewards going down is to shake the When Lambo crowd and have them cancel their orders because they're on backlog. I'm not saying that's the case. I mean, look, anything's possible with any crypto project. I don't put anything past anyone these days. I'm not going to peddle that theory just yet, but that's what you will hear in certain corners, and it gets stranger than that, some of the theories. But
why would they do that? Okay, like I understand if the bees were shipping right now, maybe you can make a case for that, but like why would they 6 months before these new models start shipping start decreasing the progress of the projects? Like, and I mean, it doesn't really make sense in my opinion. I think they got a little aggressive with this last update. They obviously did test it, but we're seeing it is bricking some dash cams. And I'm seeing it in Discord, I'm seeing it in Facebook groups. That said, there's still probably way more people who didn't brick their cameras. You always have to remember, like, the people going on there are the ones complaining. That's not the masses, right? But I don't think it makes sense for them to purposely brick these cameras, especially right now. But there will get to a point where, to take this to the next level, they have to have a camera that's capable of doing more. And these dash cams will get phased out over time. I mean, that's just how it's going. I think it's going to have to happen. But you do have a 1-year warranty on it. So, they're going to have some stock of the HDCs in place so that, if your camera does die, you can get a new camera. And then at a certain point, they'll probably run out of that stock, and they'll give you the option to either upgrade for the price differential of the new camera or likely get a refund. And so back to my original point, like I plan on shifting over to the new dash cams as that happens. But yeah, I don't see the point for them to be purposely bricking cameras right now. I don't buy that at this point, at this stage in the project.
I'm glad you brought that up. The fact that there might be the possibility that they don't support the Hivemapper Dashcam C in the future, just trying to move forward. We don't know, obviously, what's going to happen. But that was actually brought up by someone. Like, I can't run new software on an old computer. Do you think we'll get to that point? Especially with the recent update that caused a lot of issues. We're seeing that these cameras just aren't able to compute this stuff. Hopefully the update that they just pushed out fixed it, resolved it. But I would expect to see some issues coming up as they're trying to shift their focus onto the new cameras. We might see it slow down for the progress on the old dash cams.
Can we get your thoughts on that, Josh? I'll be right back, but go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the Ariel has mentioned in the past, he sees ongoing support for the HDC. He said in the last AMA for at least 12 to 18 months. I wouldn't be surprised if it was even longer than that. It is hard, though, to support multiple platforms. So now you need a firmware version for each one. You have to do testing for each one. And if they want to keep pushing the boundaries of what the cameras are able to do, then they need, better hardware within the device itself. And the HDC was their first version, and they have learned a lot since then. So do I foresee 5 years from now the HTC is still operating, I would be extremely surprised, because I don't think they'll want to do that kind of maintenance on it, nor do I think they should be obligated or required to. So I think we will see a shift towards other devices, rightfully so, in my opinion. Like one of the commenters said, you can't run new software on an old computer. It just, if you want to be able to do more, you need hardware that's able to keep up with that.
For sure. And I think it's important to distinguish, okay, support, meaning that you'll be able to continue using your HTC, versus they're going to run out of HTCs at some point. So if yours does die, you're not going to be able to get a replacement HTC at some point. Like that will absolutely happen. But either way, I think it makes sense. It's for the project. They need to keep pushing it forward. I think they've executed very well, really, to this point. When things have come up, they've been quick to fix them, and they're building a map and building hardware. I mean, those are two very difficult things to do. So, for where we're at right now, I think it's been a huge success so far, but we do need to continue pushing this forward, and that is going to require better hardware. So I think it makes sense.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Do you guys want to talk about the other MIPs that were proposed? I believe we already covered 7, but there's 4 more. So we got MIP 8, 9, 10, 11.
Sure. Yeah. So a quick thing on MIP 8, the region activation, deactivation, and the fill-in in some countries, US, around the UK. I forget the specifics on which countries. I think the team has showed, even before MIP 8 was put out there, that they were creating new regions faster than the 4 weeks they said it would take. They want everyone to be, getting your camera and feeling happy right away as soon as possible, that, hey, I'm earning rewards. It's very frustrating for someone to spend money on a camera, then wait potentially months before they receive the camera. And then the first week they go out and map, they go, oh, I did 500 kilometers this week and I made 3 honey. What the hell happened? That doesn't make any sense. And they feel discouraged on the first thing, which is not a good thing. So lately they've been able to increase that cadence of adding regions really, really fast, which is demonstrated by the data they shared, where only 4 mappers were outside of a region. So I'm all for that. Now, some people said, hey, if region activation is happening very quick, why is region deactivation taking, maybe 4, even 6 weeks potentially before regions are deactivated? It's a touchy subject as well, because if someone maps and then they're, let's say, go away on vacation for a few weeks, or they go out of town for work and they come back 3 weeks later and the region is gone, now they have to go through that cadence again. So it's a little bit harder for them to kind of go back and forth like that. I can understand the frustration on why is it longer, but I can see from the team standpoint of, hey, here's a region. If no one's mapping, fleet owners try and fill it in, or try and send a camera that way if possible.
Yeah. Like I think with them adding so many regions now, it would be a moot point sooner than later. But I was one of the people that suggested that we remove it after 2 or 3 weeks if you're going to add it in 2 or 3 weeks, because for a couple different reasons. I mean, if someone's like driving through an area to go down to vacation in Florida and then they drive back through the next week, it shouldn't be added as a region. Like, that's crazy. I get your point. If you go on vacation for 2 or 3 weeks, it shouldn't be removed, but you're not really adding value to the network if you're the only person mapping in your region. I mean, you are to an extent, but there's no resilience there. So I think it would incentivize people to buy more cameras and get their friends mapping, or give their camera, if you're going out of town, like Joe, for instance, to another person to map in that region, because that is bringing value, having that refreshed every week. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to die on that hill, but I did make my point in there. And that is one thing I have to say that's been slightly frustrating with these MIPs, is that they kind of just propose it and they say, this is happening in a week or 2 and give us your thoughts, but then don't change anything. I would like to see a little bit more of like a community vote aspect to it, or at least like, take our thoughts into consideration a little bit, because it does impact us, and none of these changes have impacted their employee or investor token unlocks. And I get they can't change the investor token unlocks. I personally went in there and I said I would like to see some type of incentive for the employee unlocks to match map progress, since ours do. I think that would, and they'd line up their compensation with ours. I don't think that'll happen, but I think it would be interesting. because right now, like when they're just pushing these things out, if they were being impacted by it as well, I think people would be a lot more welcoming to some of these changes. But anyway, that said, I think it makes sense. The MIP makes sense in what they're doing. But I do wish that they would let us have a little bit more impact on some of these decisions, frankly.
Well, yeah, and I have to admit, and you were there for it, Brad, and I think Chris heard some of it as well. I certainly had a knee-jerk reaction to that MIP 8, even though that's kind of like what I try not to do on the stream. I mean, it was like, oh no, this does not sound good, because the way it was initially written was, in my opinion, very minimal and sounded like we're going to do this at our, as we see fit. And oh, by the way, we're pushing this MIP Super Bowl weekend, and you have 5 days to discuss, and we're doing it anyway. I mean, it looked, the communication there was pretty atrocious at that time. Now, I'm not going to say that this was in bad faith or that this was, that's their style of doing things. It just may have been a mistake. But the point being is, yeah, at first I was very upset by what was being said here and discouraged. So that's, touchy subject. And I was one of the people in the Discord, as many of you were, debating and saying, let's proceed with caution. Although I do want to see people be rewarded, as they're contributing, and this makes that fair. Go ahead.
Yeah. And yeah, to your point, like I don't think that I think everything they're putting into place is thought out, and I think it is to move the project forward. So I don't think there's any like ill intention behind it. And to a point, like the progress does matter for them too, because that can impact the value of Honey, right? So they want this project to succeed, and they have a multiple year unlock schedule on their tokens. So I mean, they want the project to succeed as much as anybody. So I don't think that they're doing anything like to try to like screw people over or anything. I think it's for the betterment of the project. But yeah, I do remember, Joe, that day we hopped on a call and I was like, take a deep breath. Let's see how this plays out, man.
Yeah, no, I think one of the biggest changes for me, like the main project that my company works on is the Graph, and the Graph is a very decentralized, distributed conglomerate of teams pushing in the same direction. So really that Web3 ethos of decentralization, let's all have a say, let's vote on things, let's make it all happen together. And a lot of other projects that I've worked on where I've written the documentation on here's how we do an improvement proposal process, and let's build the governance. At the early stages of Hivemapper, I said, hey, do you guys want me to write that for Hivemapper as well? Hivemapper is not a crypto company. That was my biggest learning. Hivemapper is a company that happens to use crypto for the payments layer, because it happens to enable something that's very hard to do otherwise. So it's hard for us that come from that crypto background sometimes to kind of square that round peg and make it all make sense. We have to look at it from a different standpoint. My take on it, they don't want to have that crypto ethos, and nor do I think they should, because I brought up other MIPs internally with the team. When I wrote it out, I got a lot of support from some people within Hivemapper or some of the other community members I've kind of socialized the idea with. But then I realized when I brought it up to higher ups in Hivemapper, they go, oh, but this doesn't take into account X, Y, and Z that are coming down the road. So we as a community don't have the same visibility into what's coming down the road. And so at a certain point, we have to kind of put our trust into them that they're doing the best for the network. Will they make mistakes? Guaranteed. Will they make great decisions? Guaranteed as well. So it's tough that we kind of have to feel like we have a bit less say, but they are very receptive to hearing feedback. They don't always take it into account, even if a lot of people say, hey, that's great feedback.
Yeah. I have a hard time with that, though, we're not a crypto company, but we're going to take all the benefits of using crypto for this project. Like, I think I don't know. That's hard for me to kind of understand. I mean, I get what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But to complain about, oh, people are upset about this, and people in the crypto space, complain about this, but we want to have all the benefits of using crypto for our project. Like, I think it is a crypto project. I mean, frankly, they are using blockchain. They're using a token incentive model. and they're in the deep end space to get participation. They wouldn't be able to do what they're doing right now without a token incentive model, frankly. Yeah, but
and I've heard,
go
I
on,
have
Joe.
heard some of those, some, I would say more off the cuff comments from the team where they say they don't, they might say, well, we don't care about the price. And I understand. I mean, I feel the same way. I don't really care about the price at every hour of the day and what it's doing. I don't look at the charts all that. Point stipulated. But when you say that kind of stuff, or, you say we're not a crypto company, we don't necessarily care about the crypto, that does have an odd demeanor towards it to some people's point of view. And I get exactly what you're saying, Brad, even though I do think they care. I do think,
Yeah,
Ariel and Gabe do care about seeing people be compensated fairly. Some people take that the wrong way when some of these comments are just made, or maybe they receive them the wrong way, interpret them the wrong way.
I mean, if I were them, I would care. I mean, they have millions of reasons to care. So I personally would care. Maybe they don't, but either way, though, I do have to say, like, the MIPs in general, I get the thought behind it. I think the communication could improve. That's one thing, is, not, hey, this is happening in 5 days, whether you like it or not. I think communication could improve. I think, when you do something, when you communicate it like that, you're going to get people that have passionate responses. But the way they played out, it hasn't, I think it has been good for the project overall, and it's continued to push things forward. So I think it's important for us when they put these things out to kind of wait and see how they have their impacts, rather than, people, freak out right away and think the world is ending, Yeah.
Well, there's one thing I wanted to say about governance. Now, of course, there's not. It's much more. I don't know how you want to call it here, but there's no like actual voting process other than amongst the team themselves, which is a little bit different than most crypto projects. But my experience with seeing how governance in other projects takes place in the vast majority of cases is it's much like elections here in the United States and the rest of the world. 90% of the time, nobody's really paying attention to the details and they don't care. And then there's 10% of the time that there's this outrage and they vote with their feet and they really don't truly understand. And that's something hard to deter in any crypto governance system. And it's also very hard to give proportional voting metrics to those who are voting when you want to, make sure someone's not making 100 wallets and trying to tip the vote, etc. But I think Hivemapper at this point is in a very good place. They have enough metrics, as we've seen on, if you were to go to your wallet on the Explorer, they have enough different metrics that they could weight for community voting, whether it's you're using the AI trainer, you're mapping unique kilometers, you're a fleet owner, you're participating in different ways. And they could also, I'm not for distributing the entirety of the decision making to the community because it's not realistic, but they certainly could make a more, involved from the community standpoint type of governance system where they feel some of these decisions could be, taken from the community. And I think that would be a good faith and reflect very well on them. And it would give people the incentive to, boost their wallet trophies, we should say, the AI score level, first time map, etc. A lot of people take a lot of pride in that to begin with, but that would certainly be your voting power. I think that would be a great proposal that we should look at making a MIP for.
I don't think it's going to happen, but yeah, I mean, you can propose it for sure. What other MIPs are there that we haven't covered yet? There's the one for
MIP 9 is the one that you guys are kind of talking about right now, which is the Joe, you're muted right now.
Written and sponsored by Josh Kauffman.
Yeah.
Look at that.
One other way that while they might not take voting into account, or here's everyone's opinion and we're going to try and make everyone happy, one thing they have always said is, hey, if you want to see a change, write a MIP. I've written 3 or 4 MIPs. This is the first one that's become an actual MIP. This was something.
Can you go through that process for us? How you would do a MIP proposal real quick?
So personally, the way I look at it as, what's the problem set? For this MIP 9 specifically was I have engineers that want to work on something because us as fleet managers, we need data access. Because we don't have that data access, other people also need that data access. They're also flying blind. So can we make sure that us as developers can work on this problem, or someone else, the guy who made the flip side charts, for example, his time is valuable. And if we want to see that be maintained going forward, any changes that happen be integrated, they should, in my opinion, be receiving a reward from Hivemapper or the foundation. So I looked at that and said, here's the problem, here's the proposed solution, and how do we make it? No, I don't want to look at it, here's my problem, how do I fix my specific problem? But there's a need for others to also be doing this. So how do I write a proposal that's going to say, here's something that fixes my problem and can be used by other people to fix their own problem? This one is scoped down to data being surfaced out to either fleet managers or drivers or potential investors, but it could be for any MIP, can be for anyone, as long as you can see there's a benefit for the community. Figure out your problem set. Here's my proposed solution. I then went to the team and said, hey, here's what I'm thinking about writing. Do I have your support or not? Some people internally might say yes or no. Then I'm going to bounce that idea back with them, back and forth until we come up with something that we feel can get support. And then ultimately it's up to them to say, yes, this will be an official MIP. So that's kind of the process.
Josh, I want to thank you for that. That you're providing these metrics, and the metrics you have provided up to this point. And I would, I don't know of the inside scenario, how this, well, you just said you wrote it, but I mean, I was probably the main complainer about how we didn't have the metrics, and this MIP 8 was being proposed, and we really weren't able to crunch the numbers on potential outcomes of scenarios with these regions being added, and come to any sort of calculated conclusion. And that kind of makes you wonder when the Hivemapper team, they're not proposing these metrics, but it's Josh, you're not an official member of the Hivemapper team. You're just a moderator and a contributor, correct?
Correct. Yeah. For about a year and a half, we were working with the team, and I would be on daily stand-up calls with their engineering team. Me and my 2 engineers, we were considered like really core contributors. That's no longer the case. Essentially what happened was we work on quite a few projects, my company, and we had to make a decision at some point where we were kind of just resource constrained. We want to work on X, Y, and Z projects, and something had to give. I voted for, let's keep resources on Hivemapper. I was kind of outvoted internally. But that being said, we're still all very gung-ho on Hivemapper.
Yeah, so that's something that I was kind of like, I really had a WTF moment where it's like, okay, if it's Josh who's providing us with the metrics that we're debating over MIP 8, and the Hivemapper team's not doing it, do they have the metrics internally themselves? Do they just not have, could they give us the light version on just post it there? We don't want to see their dashboard necessarily, but can you copy and paste something for us, please? Like, that was very agitating to me that we don't have that. And we have some resources. There's people creating, trying to create resources. But I love seeing this, that we're going to have a tool or numerous tools to start really analyzing this data and understanding the trends.
Yeah, no, I'm fully with you. Whenever I'm flying blind, how do I make a decision, or how do I even contribute to that conversation properly? And I like to think I know how to figure out where to find certain aspects. A good thing to do is, if you ever have specific questions about data, what's going on here, what's going on there, Gabe is one of the best guys at Hivemapper to ask those questions to. And if he doesn't have the answer, he knows who does. So asking questions, can they be more transparent? 1,000%. Sometimes there's also, you kind of shoot yourself in the foot by being too transparent, where some people will look at the same data and misinterpret it. So that's why
definitely.
I always look at this as, I have to give them the benefit of the doubt. the guys working there are very smart, very intelligent people, and if they're saying they have the data to back up something, like in the latest change to MIP 7, where they said there were only 4 contributors outside of regions, I trust them. I can't verify that myself. I'm just gonna have to trust that the data they're giving us is correct.
Mhm.
So if they're making a decision based on data, I'm gonna have to.
Or maybe you could say you trust that it's well intentioned what they're giving you. They're not trying to mislead you. I mean, it's you really gotta double, triple, and quadruple check what your the data sets that you're scraping it in with any type of work in such a like large scaled project. Yeah, it's very hard to always be accurate. And yeah, you're right. It's a double-edged sword that some of the people from the community, they take this data and they try to manipulate it into conspiracy. They try to game the system. They look for the negativity wherever they can, or they just don't understand it. They only see it. They don't understand the system in completion and do an Olympic level pole vault to conclusions.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta say, good job on this, Josh. I mean, here I am complaining that they're not taking my feedback from MIPs, and you're over here writing them. So that it's like, yeah, we can sit here and complain, and you're like actually doing something about it. That's awesome. This is something we looked at very early on when we were building out the fleet tools, is having these metrics. I remember talking about this with you like a long time ago. This is going to be absolutely huge. I wish you'd added a 3-way split on the token model, but it is what it is.
Yeah, no, there's quite a few things where even though my team, we built out a lot of the fleet integration, there were certain systemic architectural decisions that happened that made certain things a lot harder. 3-way splits being one of those. It's a little bit harder now to add 3-way split. Do I think it's needed? 100%. Would it save me time? 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see some things in the future that will change and make things easier.
Yeah. I mean, being able to see like a dashboard where I have all my different drivers, I can see which ones are mapping. Because right now I have a bookmark for each individual driver on the Explorer. It would be really awesome to be able to see that all in one place. Because then I can reach out to them like, hey, you got a town, are you having problems with your dash cam? What's going on? So that'll be really cool to see those features launched.
I wanted to bring something up. This would go back to the community voting that most of us would like to see, but it's not in place right now. The fact that there's no actual number on the Hivemapper dashboard of how many dash cams are out there, how many dash cams are being used, how many are inactive. All we have is the contributor number. And the interesting thing about that is that's linked to phantom wallets. So if your wallet gets hacked, if you have to make a new wallet, I've used 3 different wallets for my dash cam. It creates a new name every single time. You can actually look right now. We have 81,700 contributors right now. Some of those wallets haven't been seen in 24 months, so they're not active. They have nothing to contribute to the ecosystem anymore. And just having that number, like if I go on Helium, I can still figure out how many hotspots are out there. Having something like that, I don't know, it just gives me kind of a peace of mind. What's the face, John?
I mean,
how many hotspots are on the denial list or what?
Well, that's a different story.
Yeah, it'd be good to see those metrics. I mean, I think the metrics that I care about the most are like how much progress are we seeing with mapping. I would love to see this year them announce some people buying this data. I know they have people buying it. It's under NDA. I get it. But that's where this project has to go, y'all. Like people have to buy this data or none of this matters. But I know, this last year they've been doing a lot of, and this is normal to do proof of concepts, right? To show that, hey, this data is valuable to you, and then you ink long-term deals. That's how this stuff works. So I think I would imagine they're getting to a point where they're starting to get some of those contract negotiations closed out, I would think, with some big name players. I would love to see a couple big name companies announced buying this data at some point. I think it'll happen. I think it'd be really bullish for this project when it does happen. And yeah, I think as we get more and more coverage and a better refresh rate in some of these high value cities and more tools are built out to make this data actionable for companies, we'll see more and more revenue coming into the project. So that's really where this needs to go.
They did just announce that they will be adding like mapping in the app to guide you to the bursts, which it's like a little teaser. Maybe there will be some sort of Google Map competitor there, but that's just my conspiracies.
Yeah, I think that's going to be huge. I mean, if you're a company and you want imagery somewhere, I mean, that was kind of one of the main concepts behind the whole idea from a high level view when this first started. So to be able to see like these tools being built out finally and see this stuff implemented is awesome.
Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, but this total weekly total honey burn here is what's spent for data credits and burnt in honey, correct?
Yeah. Now it's possible that there's some. I remember when they I forget the MIP number or the blog post. They said until there's such time as maybe the end of a proof of concept or we receive payment from the company, we don't have to do the full purchase and burn from the market. So it's potential that there's some proof of concepts that are going on that, yes, the token burn you can see on that chart is extremely low. I think we're in the order of a couple hundred tokens a week right now that are being burned, 200-300, whereas we've had weeks that were much higher before. But it could be that there's a buildup of a large bank that's going on. We don't know. I do know that there's been some really great proof of concepts that they've been working on. I can't get into who, but I would be very excited for any of them to be announced, and I think they would make a huge splash, not just within the Web3 space, but the Web2 space even as well.
For sure.
Yeah, and they do. If you browse around, I just want to mention this for the audience. In the documentation, and if you go under use a map, I believe it's the map data console, you have to pay in fiat, but you could do it with your wallet or you sign in with your wallet, or you can sign in with your Phantom or your Google account, and you'd buy the credits in fiat. Each image costs 2 cents, but basically, if you were to go to that, it's really an Explorer page, but it pulls from the API. You can select the roads and see, what you map. Well, you can't see what you mapped unless you know you mapped it. Like, you can't figure out who mapped what unless you know somehow how to correlate that, right? Like, I correlated Chris's location, but that's only because he has me added on Snapchat and he shares his location. I was like, "Hey, bro, nice view." Yeah. Next video. Showing YouTubers their house through their Hivemapper data. Just kidding. All joking aside, you can use this, you can demo it. And if there are people who are out, I think we should start talking about doing some sort of community push for those who are interested, because this Scout, once it comes of age, that it is very reliable. And I think there's going to be great interest in using those bursts to generate constantly refreshed data for that Scout to alert businesses for that data they're looking for. Yeah. And that's something, as I'd like to help lead the discussion in, and I'll probably do a demo of it on some videos. But yeah, this product line a lot of people don't talk about it, especially on YouTube, because it doesn't get the clicks, it doesn't get the hits. But this is really supposed to be, the meat and potatoes of the project. And I would make the argument that the product that we're offering, that Hivemapper's offering, as far as mapping, is much more, and the competitiveness of their solution is much more substantial than what we've seen from the vast majority of the deep in space and the other ones that have solutions looking for a problem. I think we're about to see that striking point of, well, I wouldn't say about to, but we will see with Hivemapper that it finally achieves what we've wanted to see in Deepin so far, that being a greater inflow of value than outflow through emissions rewards.
I agree. That's where Deepin needs to go. I mean, that's why I like these projects like Hivemapper, like Demo, because when you look at like infrastructure plays like Helium, for example, it's a 2 market cycle thing. I mean, you have to build up the infrastructure first, then people have to build products to use that network. With something like Hivemapper and Demo, where you're collecting data, you can turn revenue on a lot faster, and you can really do it in 1 market cycle. So I think, that's one of the big problems with Deepin to this point has been that, there's some great concepts, some really cool stuff being worked on, but I'm curious to see which projects this market cycle turn on the revenue, because that's what needs to happen for any of these projects to have staying power and go from being a narrative that pumps in a bull run to something that has legitimacy. And if we can get a couple big Web 2 companies using this data, and to a point where this network becomes critical to their day-to-day business, that's going to be absolutely massive. So I really hope that we can see some of those announcements come this year, because that will push DePIN into something that's really legitimate and not just in the crypto space. And I think it will happen. That's what I'm trying to identify, which projects are going to do it. But I have a video I'm putting out on GeoNet here next week. I think that's another project that has some real promise, that's bringing in revenue today too.
Yeah, but once again, going back to the whole, it's my big thing with, as a YouTuber and having, like, when we talk about some of these actual, like, networking, like, we're talking network communications type of stuff, when I know the technical side, because that's what I do for a day job, then I see the comments that people write to me on YouTube asking me questions, and I have that kind of in between, I understand how people interpret it. Well, when I see some of this stuff that's being presented by many of these projects, or just even like small terms, I really get frustrated knowing that it's going to be misinterpreted by the audience and cause that type of FUD. Like, one of the suggestions I made to the Hivemapper team is the term progress for the progress score is, like, I get it's just a really bad way of describing it, because it's not the overall entirety progress up to that point of how many roads have been mapped. And if you were to look over 2 columns, you can see, like, an area has 100,000 kilometers, but only 10,000 kilometers have been mapped. So that's 1/10 of the total, but you see a 75% progress score, but people will still believe 75% of the roads have been mapped. No, that's not how it works. So I recommend they change it. I said the efficiency score, but there were better ones than what I recommended. There is I don't remember them, but I know there were better ones. So if Hivemapper, you're watching this, I think you should change it still. Because you have literally, as a content creator, you have to go back and, like, people have this preconceived notion, and I have to tell them, forget what you think you understand about this, because it's not the cumulative progress up to this point. This is a term just describing a concept they've created through a formula. Chris, why were you laughing?
I thought it was funny. You just said I still think you should change it. I agree. It is confusing.
Yeah, no, Hivemapper is a fairly complex calculation that's going on in the background, and especially without transparency into that calculation, for someone to go and vet it themselves, it makes it really hard for a lot of people to grok it. And especially, like you said, someone who's kind of looking at it for the first time, they make assumptions, and their assumptions are usually wrong based on the wording that's being given. Just something as simple as coverage is not the representation of how much coverage has happened. It's, did we reach 15% of the total road kilometers? That's a very unintuitive concept for people. I agree with that as a metric. I agree with the way they've set it up, and eventually the 15% will grow to a higher threshold.
Yeah,
it makes sense. But someone's first knee-jerk intuition on it is going to be wrong 100% of the time.
In fact, I found out that for that particular example, their assumption of MIP7 is exactly the opposite of what it was intended for. It was intended to make some proportional, not only take into account how much of the world your region makes up, but how much work that you and the people in that region are doing, and give you a proportionally fair compensation for that region through the multiplier. But if people think it's like the cumulative progress up to that point of how much roads have been mapped, they think that just because a region is more mapped, that everyone's getting more rewards, and it's not incentivizing the places that have to be mapped. They come to that assumption, and it's like, that's completely opposite of what's going on here. Like, that's not what it is.
Yeah. Not to say it's an easy task to kind of word everything, especially
Oh, I understand.
on a table. Here's the one word.
Yeah.
It's a very hard task they have. Can they do better? Yeah. I think if this conversation kept being pushed, that's a perfect example of somewhere where if someone came up with a good word to replace it with, I think Hivemapper would be very happy to say, yeah.
They're in the mapping section, I think, or I don't know. There was my long complaining messages. Well, I wasn't complaining. It was very constructive at that point, but like, you could find it in one of the channels people don't chat so much in, but you just need to change it in a few places, a few MIPs, and a few and on the Explorer, and I think it would be pretty easy. But yeah, real quick, I did want to ask you, Josh, when we talk about, before we get to the other MIPs, for these calculations, the formula is on the website, but the smart contract, I don't believe you can find the actual smart contract on Solana, because Solana is a little bit different than the other EVM type of blockchains. So can you give us any insight into the flow of, how, when starting at what you've uploaded, how does that get calculated and how is that pushed out? Like, what's actually taking place behind the scenes? Because I think you may know better than any of us. If you can't disclose that, totally understandable.
Yeah, no, I can give you kind of my interpretation of it. It's probably not 100% accurate, so I'll preface it with that. So as soon as the imagery is being uploaded, it goes into an Amazon S3 bucket. It gets then processed and kind of grouped by, here's from this contributor. Now, I know there's privacy that happens right away. They say, we don't even want to track, here's the username from that. Here's a unique ID for that kind of contributor, so they can't even say, oh, this was Josh or this was Joe. The team doesn't want to know all that. So at that point, then it gets processed, the imagery. So when you submit imagery, let's say you drove a route on Monday, but you submitted it on Thursday, it's the timestamp is as of Monday. So it gets calculated based on, hey, I drove this thing on Monday. That was, 7 days since it's been mapped. So I'm going to get the maximum amount of rewards at that point, versus if someone drove it on Sunday, I get 1/7 of it. So then they assign an amount of, I like to call them points. I don't know if they have another word internally for it. It's basically seconds since it was last mapped. They kind of say, okay, for Josh's account, he got 10 million seconds here or 3 million seconds here in aggregate for the imagery that was submitted. And then it kind of gets bucketed down to, for this region, there was 1,000 points that were earned. And Josh drove 300 of those points. So he's going to get 3/10 of the amount of rewards going there. Now they create a kind of an invoice receipt for, here's how much Josh should be getting from this region. This region is going to put out 100 tokens. He's getting 3/10. He should get 30 tokens. That invoice receipt gets pushed to the smart contract. So the calculation happens prior to any kind of blockchain work happening. They figure out, here's how much has to be rewarded to this list of drivers. They push that list to the smart contract, as well as, I think prior to that, here's a list of all the fleets and all the fleet splits. So then let's say Bradley updated for his fleet driver. This guy's doing a great job. I had him at 50%. He's now at 60% to incentivize all the great work he's been doing. He's going to put a change. They're going to push all of those changes to the blockchain smart contract and say, hey, he should be getting 60%. And then the invoice receipts, as well as the fleet split, then get pushed to I forget the contract. It's like BN something. And that is the minting contract. Will then say it takes in all those receipts. It pushes out the rewards.
And I do want to make a kind of a comment. And the way you described it, Josh, is the way I also came to the same conclusion. Very similar, 99% overlap. There's people that complain because we can't see all this on the blockchain, right? There's no way you would be able to implement this type of complex parsing and storing of data in any type of blockchain mechanism for what, for the really the core of the system, what Hivemapper is trying to do, the imagery database. Like there's absolutely no way that could be processed through, Solana's virtual machine type of so anyway, they do have to calculate the metrics internally. And would they be able to open up an API to see how those metrics are fluctuating? Yes, but there's also a massive risk in opening any API and a massive headache. And I believe one of the reasons they also said that some of this data, as far as like the entirety of the smart contract, the entirety of the formula, why it hasn't been made public, is because people try to game the system, which we know to be true. At one point, they will reverse engineer it. That's just kind of always how it happens. But I guess the point I'm getting at here is that, this can't all be done on the blockchain. Would it be nice to see how this stuff is being calculated internally? Yes, hopefully we do get some of those metrics. Like if there's a partner that could limit what is being provided. So not just anyone could go make an API call and try to either hack the system or try to get, what they need to figure out how to game the system. I think that would be a fair middle ground. And like the other grievance that I always see is like people hate that it's hosted on AWS because this is Web3, bro. And we're supposed to be using decentralized compute. Well, I'll tell you what, I don't think you're going to find a decentralized compute project that's going to have the features and the capability, the processing power to have it, for what this operation needs, let alone the quality of experience and the development tools like that, gets me a little agitated when I hear that kind of FUD.
Yeah.
IONET. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I think that the team would like to be able to use other offerings if
we all would.
Yeah, the team, I'm sure their AWS bill is crazy high. I know our company, my company, our bill, we use GCP, is extremely high, and we'd love to be able to knock that down. If some of these decentralized compute or decentralized storage solutions would be A, feature complete, B, at least at parity, and C, cheaper, I'm sure they would love to switch. Now, there's also a question of, do we want to start evaluating all those things and moving over a lot of the processes, and what happens if it goes wrong and now you've wasted a lot of engineering cycles? Right now the team is very resource constrained because they're growing like crazy, and I'm sure if they had more people they would be looking at those solutions. I know they've looked a bit. We can't forget, at the end of the day, the lead investor of Hivemapper is Multicoin Capital. Multicoin Capital is invested in a bunch of those solutions, so I'm sure they're getting some internal pressure as well from investors. Hey, why don't you use this thing? I'm sure that's happening as well. And they're already, I'm sure they're in talks with some of those projects, but it needs to get to a point where they can devote the engineering time, they can make sure it'll run and not have fears that it'll run for a bit and then it'll hit up into a roadblock. So there's a lot that goes into that decision.
Yeah. It'll be cool to see, speaking of those, the decentralized storage and cloud computing protocols, like there's a lot of people building out tools to make it easier to use, like Filecoin or Arweave. And like IONET is launching their token pretty soon. That's going to be a massive cloud computing network. Nosana is another really good one, and Render obviously has been running. But it would be cool to see some integrations with some of those projects if it makes sense. I'm not sure that they're quite there yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if they are evaluating it.
Yeah, no, I've even started kind of socializing another MIP that I had in mind for how do we create this other persona within the network where it's that 10% that's going to operational rewards should be going to other teams that want to provide their own compute, provide their own data storage solutions, and they can choose to use Filecoin or IONET or whatever it may be if they want to. So now how do we start giving up the rewards and figuring out who's doing the right amount of work, what work needs to be done? It's a whole process that needs to happen around that. It's very difficult to figure out. And I think once they have the B figured out. So right now, I think their engineering time should be focused on the B. How do we get that where it needs to be? And then all this stuff around it can happen as well. And I have to trust that they're making internally the correct decisions.
James Arville writes, I don't think there's a smart contract. It's a normal software algorithm, is my guess. Well, you need at least a bare minimum couple lines of code for anything to be paid out, any coin to be created on any blockchain. You need a smart contract, or sorry, any token to be paid out on a smart contract. You need on a blockchain. You need a smart contract. You guys get what I'm saying though? Like, so that it's distinguished between a coin and a token. The coin is the native currency of that blockchain. So for the Solana blockchain, it's Solana. For Ethereum blockchain, it's ETH. But Honey would be a token on the Hivemapper. Honey would be a token on the Solana blockchain. I'm really stumbling over my words, so I should stop trying to explain stuff. But yes, James also said probably the engineers are writing improvement proposals, and we know how engineers think and talk versus normies. That's very true. Very true. And that's something I've come to understand as a YouTuber and working with engineers every day at my day job. I'm a network engineer as well. You don't understand how smart you are. And, where people are, look, there's people who aren't engineers who maybe they don't have my abilities, but I know they're smart in other areas that where if they were talking, it would be over my head. So we all need those checks. And I always try to offer that up to the team wherever I can. Sorry, go ahead. Was there someone going to?
No, you're good.
Next MIP?
Yeah, MIP 10, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I think we can even lump MIP 10 and MIP 12 kind of together. The way I look at it is people that don't have a Dashcam, them being rewarded for the work they're doing. So MIP 10 is specifically about app-based contributions. In the MIP, it talks about using the buzz button, the phone using your GPS trace. For someone that doesn't have a Dashcam, use the GPS trace of the phone to now, add that info maybe for traffic, whatever it may be. And for MIP 12, that's the QA or the map AI trainer portion increasing from 3% to 10%. So I look at those kind of together myself as people that had a Dashcam contributing to the network and being rewarded for that work. I'm all for there being more methods to contribute because, like we've said, it's not everyone can afford a Dashcam. And right now, there's a very long way. If you order a Dashcam today, if you place an order for a B right now, I would be extremely surprised if you got that within this calendar year. I hope I'm wrong in that. But someone who's interested in Hivemapper now to the point where they want to be involved, they've put down their money. I think they should have another way to contribute and be rewarded for that effort because we want to keep them engaged. We want them to be engaged and then telling their buddy about it. Hey, I'm doing this thing. You should order a camera. Here's this other thing I'm doing within Hivemapper. I'm being rewarded for my time. I'm helping to build this thing. And now we get a lot more people that are excited about what's going on within Hivemapper. I think it's a very good thing. Obviously, it decreases rewards for Dashcam owners that are contributing through the Dashcam. I would, I'll go out on a limb and say I think we're potentially overcompensated. So I think while it does suck to get less rewards, I think there's fairness in the system as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's back up a little bit here because we're jumping in so quick that I might have missed something, but I know the audience is maybe saying MIP 10 and 12. But okay, so 10 rewards for the buzz feature. Is there a specific amount given every time someone buzzes, or specifically for using it? And of course, these buzzes are going to be checked, so you can't just hit it all the time and expect it to pay out. But these, is this coming from Foundation or from a portion of? Okay.
It's going to start from Foundation. It's going to be a bounty essentially, and they've even said that they will tweak how much will go. So it's not a direct amount. You hit buzz, you get 1 honey, whatever it may be. It's maybe one day you hit it 10 times and you get 1 honey, and the next week you hit it 10 times and you get 0.1 honey or 3 honey, whatever it may be, because they're going to tweak it based on what they think the correct incentive is to keep people engaged, as well as ensuring, are we getting good data from this? It's a brand new feature. They don't know what the data is going to look like. Is there going to be a click farm of people just, hitting buzz all the time? Are people going to be driving around? They don't know. So I think they're doing it right in putting it out as a bounty that's controlled by the Foundation, not putting out the calculation on here's how we're going to do it, because they're going to have to tweak this it's going to be abused in a large way. And I think they're doing it right where they said, hey, we're going to have baseline rewards for people that are using the in-app contribution methods globally. And then we've selected 15 regions in the world where we're going to give boosted rewards because we see a lot more drivers there. We see a lot more engagement because don't forget, once you hit buzz, if you have no dash cam, kind of what they want to get to is I say, hey, there's construction in this area. Until a picture matches it up, all I've done is give information of hopefully there actually is construction there. But the benefit that Hivemapper can propose is here's what the construction looks like. So now a logistics company, I used to own a restaurant that was 85% delivery. So I had 20 cars on the road on a Saturday night delivering. If I knew there's construction there versus, hey, there's just a cop that's blocking a lane, that's very useful to me when I'm dispatching my orders because I know that guy's going to be in traffic still in 3 hours from now when I dispatch an order that way. So it's very useful for me to be able to see that difference and what's causing this delay. So that's why I think it's good to have these 15 regions that were selected as people will be able to hit buzz and another dash cam will be able to show an image.
I think it makes sense. I'll echo what Josh said. I mean, it gives people an opportunity to get involved in the project if they're waiting on a dash cam, and it's bringing value to the project. So as far as I'm concerned, whether you're mapping, whether you're using buzz reports, if you're contributing and bringing value to the network, there should be some sort of reward attached to that. So I think it's smart that they did this, really.
Let me ask you guys what your thoughts on this are, but based on the information given here and the information that they're collecting, we could probably speculate what some of the customers are saying would be valuable data to them. So this is the layer we're going to build on top of the product that we already have and the additions to it. And this is the data we're specifically looking for because it can provide us, real-time information on the roads. And I'll let you draw your own conclusions based on MIP 10 and everything that's outlined. But I think that's part of the, the maturity of this process, finding out what, maybe is more or less valuable than you initially anticipated and what customers are coming to you asking for. And I think that is one of the drivers behind buzz.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's got to be customer driven. I won't speculate on what I think is being done because it mixes with some information that I have just from having worked inside the project. But I think you're right on the nose there. It's got to be customer driven, and I can think of quite a few great customer use cases for this.
I kind of want to throw something out there that has nothing to do with, from a monetary point, it won't help Hivemapper at all. But just from trying to bring more users to their base, if they were to make this comparable to Waze and the fact that you can report when there's all these different types of road blocks, there's cops, all this stuff, you could then use the Hivemapper system to create a map so that people could use it for GPS to get from one place to another. That would bring another use case. It wouldn't necessarily be something that they could capitalize on money-wise. Like someone reporting a cop, how is Hivemapper actually going to benefit from that? But from a user standpoint, it's going to allow a lot more people to say, okay, not only am I earning crypto for mining with this dash cam, I'm also able to use this app to get from point A to point B. It's a great integration. And if they were to consider something like that, I don't know if they've talked about this at all, but it would bring more people into their space.
And as much as I love your idea, Chris, like if everyone downloaded the app and, at least they used it and allowed that data, the GPS data, etc., to be scraped, and then you could come up with, traffic flows and you could base the time estimations on that. It's going to play right into MIP 12. Somehow they got to get rewarded and everyone's going to complain.
Yes.
So Josh, if you wouldn't mind, can you start over with MIP 12 and kind of dig into that? And I'm going to turn my camera off and be back in a moment.
Sure. Yeah. So for MIP 12, the way it works currently is, let's say the global rewards pot is 1 million tokens. 10% of that goes towards operational. So that's going right now to Hivemapper Inc. for running the network, for doing all the compute, doing all the storage. The other 90% is for contributors. Now, the contributors are broken down currently into two buckets, those submitting dashcam imagery, and 97% of the 90% goes towards that map coverage, and then 3% goes towards those map AI trainers. MIP 12 is specifically to say, hey, the map AI trainers are getting currently 3%, as well as a foundation bounty that's kind of topping it up because the 3% was inadequate for the amount of work that needs to be done. So they said, okay, let's increase from 3% to 10%, which would decrease the map coverage portion from 97 down to 90%. So how do we make sure that there's enough money there without a foundation having to pay out of their own treasury to keep this thing sustained? Now, I totally agree. Nothing long-term should rely on the foundation or any treasury to open up towards that thing. It should all be self-sustained within the rewards ecosystem of the project. Now, is 10% the correct amount? From the data that they've given us, the increase from 3% to 10% pretty much covers the amount that the treasury has been having to pay out. And if they've been seeing enough demand enough supply of AI trainers, then clearly that must be a fairly accurate number for the amount of work that needs to be done.
Makes sense. I mean, I would have to believe that they've thought this through, and there's a reason why they came up with 10%. It wasn't that they just threw a random number out there. I mean, look, there has to be compensation. This is important for the project to move forward. And if the number's not big enough, then people are going to get discouraged and not want to do it. So, and to your point earlier, where you said that maybe we're overcompensated, keep that rhetoric down. I'm just kidding. but seriously, I mean, look, if the rewards drop 5, 6, 7%, to mapping contributors, I don't think it's going to stop people from mapping at this point. And all these things that are being put into play, I mean, if it's moving the project forward and makes the data more valuable, that should in turn, hopefully, be a more valuable honey token. So that's good for everybody. So even if you're earning a little bit less honey, if the project is improving, then everyone should benefit in the end, really.
Yeah. And if you think about the amount of work for anyone who had a camera really early on, the amount of work you have to do in babysitting that camera and making sure everything is uploading properly and restarting your phone, whatever it may need to happen to get the rewards eventually, the amount of work has reduced quite considerably, more than the 97 to 90% reduction in rewards, like that 7% differential for us. We're doing way less work, and then the B coming out should equate to even like very minimal work, if any. So from that standpoint, I think if we think about the amount of work we're getting in rewards for the amount of effort we're putting in, map AI trainers, there's a lot of effort. Okay, maybe it's fairly simple tasks, but you got to do a lot of them, or there's quite a few different tasks. You have to be well versed on how do I do a stop sign versus a speed limit versus a positioning versus an azimuth. You have to know a bunch of different things. So there is work, and that work kind of doesn't really decrease in effort. So it does make sense for them to be fairly compensated and increasing in
Case in point with this comment, I mean, this person said they stopped doing AI training because they weren't getting compensated enough. So they need to avoid that from happening because it is a critical part of the project.
Yeah. And I do see the point that Hivemapper internally has shared where, look, the rewards don't have to be enough for someone like myself. I live in Canada. It's a higher cost of living area. Whereas if someone who's in a very low cost of living area is happy with those rewards, and believe me, I've spoken to many people who are in those parts of the world and they say, hey, this is changing my life. I'm making way more doing this than I was at my other job. Or, I've got my family doing it because we can all participate on it and we can all make way more than we need and we can support our family from this. I'm all for that. Now, some people will say we should not be paying, I use this term lightly, like slave wages for this work, but it is, a lot of it's fairly simple work. It's just tedious. And if someone's happy to do it for that amount, who are we to say that that's the wrong amount to be paid? At the end of the day, if you go into the AI channel, everyone's complaining, we need more tasks. So apparently we are being
a lot of people. I know some people who do this, just as a way to relax, just a way to understand the system. And I go in there and click around sometimes. I know some people, they do it because, like I said, it's more like, their wallet page is their trophy case, and if they get the badges on Discord, like they just enjoy being part of the project and want to understand how it works. So it's not always, everyone's always going to complain about money. That's always the kitchen table issue, right? So anytime, that's one thing I did want to mention this point, if the Hivemapper team is listening, the constant, we should talk about the MIP that has not been named yet in the Discord, and the continuous tokenomics changes, which with this project, it seems very necessary and justified, but from a public relations standpoint, it's a hard one to get people to bite off on. People don't like change to begin with. It's complex. It's anytime someone gets their piece of the pie, scraped off a bit, they're not happy. It's always going to happen. So, do you want to elaborate? I think it's MIP 10, or no, MIP 11 that's not been listed in the Discord yet.
Yeah, I think it's I'm reticent to even elaborate on it myself, because they basically put out, hey, here's a pre-proposal. We know a change needs to happen. We know the future of the network is going to be different than it is today. What should we do? And it's hard for anyone without info, so anyone outside the team, to give any kind of good quality insight into it. Does a change need to happen? Yes. Do we need to make the system robust enough to be able to handle changes? Yes. I personally like the path that like Helium has chosen, where you have the sub DAO. Not to say it's perfect, but the idea that there's a rewards pool and a rewards token maybe for AI trainers and other things that may come down the line. I like that idea. Do I think there's a proper way to integrate it here? Maybe not. But I like the idea of having different streams, and then each stream can handle their own flow on their own. But again, it's very hard without any actual data in my hands to give proper advice or guidance.
Well, funny you mentioned the sub DAO, because like when that all happened, I was the main, whatever you like to call it, dissent, I guess you would say, not because I didn't necessarily agree with it, but because when they proposed that change, the lattes were flying off the table. I mean, the story behind it goes that, like, Vosscoin seen my initial video, he cut it and put it in his video, and then all his subs started raiding the YouTube, raiding the Helium Discord, and they were trashing the mods, trashing the foundation. So I got blamed for Vosk's opinion. I digress. The whole point was because they didn't understand, they felt that they were being rugged. They felt that because that an immediate change of the tokenomics is taking place, they're getting screwed. And that's always what I want to inform these teams. You got to really thread the needle on these ones. You got to really, I would say to any crypto team, look, take some of your foundational rewards, set them aside, small amount, and gather a panel of people, let's say 15 people, right? You take maybe 2 that are near subject matter experts. You take 3 that are reasonably involved. You take 10 who barely ever post in the Discord and they have a camera or a piece of hardware. You put your proposal, you put what you're going to release to the public in front of them and tell them, we want your immediate knee-jerk reaction. What do you make of this? How do you perceive this? Why do you feel that way? What do you not understand about this? Okay, write it all down. Let's discuss. Now, here's the points we should discuss, blah, blah, blah. Discuss amongst yourselves, and you take notes, because this is how people really think. Engineers see it from a different standpoint. People who just come in this and read it in the crypto space or anywhere else, they don't see it like that. Okay, now take a day to think about it. Come back to us. Let us know your final thoughts. Okay, here's your reward payout for discussing in the roundtable or the focus group. I think Hivemapper I think every crypto project needs to do that, and needs to understand how these things are perceived before they just blast it out. This is what we're going to do, because that's really a good way to, get a couple articles from a big company fudding you. I mean, I'm being dead serious when I say this. This is not a grievance. This is a fact based on how it plays out. You know, that's so the PR standpoint, you want to put it in front of a few people, make them sign a non-disclosure agreement. But like, yeah, you want to see how what you're writing is going to be interpreted amongst people who aren't really that involved and don't understand the system, because that's how it's going to be spoke about on Reddit. That's how it's going to be fudded in the Facebook groups. And you kind of want to curate that. So what points didn't need to be elaborated on so people truly understand, even if they don't have the greatest understanding of the system.
That's a very, very good way to do it. I agree with you.
And for the next improvement proposal I would like to make is for the YouTubers who actually post educational content and not just promo codes and bounty from the foundation wallet.
Should I put my promo code in now? Is that what
Yeah, go ahead. Show your promo code. I don't care. Oh, I'm kidding. But seriously, do you guys have anything else you want to add, or should we start wrapping this up?
When are we going to have more info on that MIP? Do you know? Have they given us any timeline?
No, if I had to guess, it might be a little bit. The reason I say that is MIP 8 came out, and then very quickly MIP 9 and MIP 10 came out. And so there was kind of this like rush of here's a bunch of stuff that's changing. And then very quickly put out MIP 11 as a pre-proposal, and MIP 12 came very soon after. I think there's a lot of changes that need to be kind of rectified into the system. So I would guess it might take a bit of time, because I think those changes will have to kind of filter through, see how that affects rewards, and then they should be able to give us better data towards here's how the rewards are currently structured. Let's revisit MIP 11. That's my guess. I thought MIP 11 was premature to come out. I was actually very surprised when I saw that written and proposed. I think it's good discussion to have, which I was actually very surprised when they put it out and did not have a MIP channel for it, because the whole point of it is let's have discussion around it. But right now there is no spot to have that discussion.
Yeah.
So I think because there is no channel, it might be a while till we'll see anything more concrete with it. That's just my speculation.
Got it. So someone in my fleet just shared your discount code. What's up with that, man?
That's not even my code.
Oh, okay. I was like, come on, man.
Yeah, Cosman's a good guy. He's a very good guy.
I would like to thank I would like to thank Bradley and Josh for getting me into this project. Proud to be part of it. Thank you guys.
Heck yeah, man.
Crypto Scotty 49. There are like maybe 5 YouTubers that know anything more than their shell code. There's more than that, and I'll tell you why. So in the beginning, I was one of the first YouTubers. The actual first guy, he committed 3-tech. He died, which I'm very sad to hear. Rest in peace. So yeah, the first few of us, we made some referrals, and I spent a lot of time with those guys explaining to them the system and like going over with them on the Discord calls before we, and I would go on their streams sometimes too and help them out. And they did pretty good. And we got, the proof of work. A lot of them are in the GPU ASIC arena. So we got a lot of traction over there. And now, they love it. They think it's great. So yeah, that's the thing, like a lot of people will tell you, oh, we're making all sorts of money, but they don't actually break down how this works or even have an understanding themselves. And it causes problems. It drives me absolutely nuts that goes on. I mean, come on, please at least try. And, the fact that I'm a YouTuber, Chris is a YouTuber, Brad's a YouTuber now. I mean, it's like a lot of times we're immediately written off as, what's he have to offer here, right? What's he know? But I think there are some who are, I came to YouTube because, my day job, I'm a network engineer. And when I started digging into Helium and finding out how it really works, I realized all the content on YouTube was wrong. So, there are some of us out there who are trying, and I appreciate everyone who supports us.
For sure.
Specifically, even with Brad's channel and some of the videos he's put out, when I bring in some new guys to my fleet, I'll send them, here's some things from the docs you got to read. Here's a couple of videos you got to watch, and those are Brad's videos. Brad's Brad, you're doing a great job with some of the content.
Thanks, man. Yeah, a lot of those videos, I'm trying to put out tutorials because as a fleet manager, especially the fleet management part of it can be quite tedious. So I'm trying to get as many videos out to kind of free up your time to be focusing on deployments and not managing the day-to-day things that pop up. By the way, my last day at work was Friday, so I'm going all in on, I'll be able to get a lot more content out. Thanks, man. So I'm excited. I've got a bunch of videos planned. I just haven't had time because I'm building out these fleets and I was working full-time job on top of it. And with the travel and everything, it was tough. But yeah, man, I'll be putting out a lot more content. I'm excited.
Awesome.
Cosman says he has a very important question, but I haven't seen the question yet. Otherwise, is there anything else you guys have in mind you want to say or get to? Floor is open. We'll take questions from the audience briefly, but we're coming up on 2 hours, and that's a lot. I
would say if there's anything that we didn't cover in this video and you guys want us to cover, be sure to reach out to one of us and we'll make sure to put it on our list for the next episode that we have of this.
Oh, he asked about remotely unlocking dash cams. There is a way to do that on the fleet management tool. But you might need to talk to John. I don't know if it's automatically.
Yeah. So it's not there automatically. You have to ask someone from the team to add the remote unlock feature to your fleet dashboard. Mm-hmm. For anyone who's unaware, I'll give a really quick run through of it. Essentially, once you send a camera out to someone, say they're not local to you, and you need to unlock that camera for whatever reason, you launched it to the wrong fleet, whatever it may be. Essentially, you'd say, especially John.Hivemapper on Discord, message him, tell him you need the remote unlock feature. And once you log back into your fleet dashboard, you'll see this button at the bottom that says remote unlock. You would click it. Now, if the button, when you click it, does nothing, it just means you need to refresh your Phantom connection. It's another troubleshooting thing that doesn't pop up to you. So just sign out, sign back into your fleet dashboard, click the button again. It should pop you up a little thing to hit like approve or create link. I believe it says create the link. And now this link is able to remotely unlock a camera. You would send that link to your driver. Your driver would then connect to the camera with a phone that has data access, so it can't be a SIM-less phone. They would connect to the camera, click that link, it would unlock the camera for you. Now, if you would lock the camera to the wrong fleet, perhaps, or something went wrong there, basically, as long as that driver is connected to their fleet account and they're part of your fleet and the access checkbox is on, then as soon as they reconnect to the camera, it's going to relock the camera for you to the correct fleet if that's what you wanted to do. Mm-hmm. But if you have any questions, just pop into the fleet channel in Discord, walk you through it. But that's kind of the flow.
Yeah. So this next stream we're doing is with Leo at Future Networks and from the State of the Hive podcast. I believe he'll be on. He said he will, but he's also in a different time zone, and it's still 2 weeks out. So I'd like to have him. Josh, we might have to have you back for that one. Like, I want to rotate through guests, but it's likely that we're going to be having you on quite a bit. Because you are a Wikipedia of information. It's great hearing the way you're objective and elaborative, so it's nice to have that. But I would like for that episode to be all specifically about fleet information, because Leo has a substantial fleet. Both of you have fleets. Yeah. I don't have a fleet. I have a couple dash cams,
but don't make
important.
So don't make any plans on Sundays, Josh.
I support my fleet of YouTubers who have their own, my YouTube audience who have their own dash cams. I field their questions.
My fleet is a gentleman's handshake with my roommate. So,
yeah, and if you guys haven't already in the audience, hit that subscribe button for all three of our channels. So, Brad, Chris, and myself. So my channel's Network Bits. Brad's is Deepen Connection. Chris is Chris Bagnell. Go ahead. You can say something, Brad?
No.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something. Yeah. No, and like I said, guys, hit that alert button so you know when these live streams are. But after the show we do 2 weeks from now will be on all 3 of our channels once again, but after that, it will only be Brad's channel. So get ready to migrate there. Yeah,
Awesome.
I'm very happy with how this turned out. This was outstanding, gentlemen. I appreciate all your contributions. Audience, we had almost 60 live viewers at one point. I think we hit 60.
Yeah.
And I always appreciate when the audience is engaging with us, because it kind of gives us cues and help. It's like, oh, I forgot that point, let me answer this, or leads us into further details of the conversation. So it's always great to have all of you here. It truly is. And for those of you who watch afterwards, we appreciate it. We hope this gives you something to listen to while you go out and map. And really, what we're doing here is trying to bring the information in an easy listen to manner. So once this is posted in the different corners of the Hivemapper community, more people pick up on this information. They better understand the system, and that further leads to them helping others who have questions and engaging in these conversations that happen in Reddit or the cesspool Facebook groups where it's nothing but FUDs and scams. And I believe what we're doing makes a difference. We're trying to contribute best we can to this project, and we'd like to see them succeed. So, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for participating.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, of course. I hear you don't like making videos, Josh. Someone told me that.
Yeah, I hate making videos. I like making content, writing content, and helping to educate. But
Yeah.
put me in front of the camera, freeze up, and
yeah. No, thanks for coming on. All right, everyone, we're gonna call it. I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for watching. Every 2 weeks, every other Sunday. So it will be March 31st at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time US that we'll do the live stream. If the live stream is not scheduled, it's because we decided we had to do that one pre-recorded, because that may be a more complex one. But typically that will always be our time, since we can broadcast to both the United States and the Europeans at a reasonable time. But that wraps it up. Thanks, everyone. Josh, thanks for being here. Brad and Chris, as always, good to have you. And I'm going to end the stream. Everyone have a great week.